Hey guys, and welcome back to Above the Tree Line, where we answer your questions about faith, Christianity, and culture. We are here in season 2 with a special guest, Mr. Rick Reynolds, who is the president and founder of Fairreoverycom here in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
I've been wanting to have you on the show for so long because you have such an interesting job, which is probably a very delicate way of putting it, but you get to work like face to face with couples who are trying to recover, like trying to keep their marriage together after an extramarital affair.
No, what I get to do is watch God's miracles. I sit on the 50-yard line of God's game of life, watching him save couple after couple from infidelity. I mean, ultimately, if you think about it, I just have a ministry of reconciliation, and all I'm doing is playing slow-pitch softball with people because our goal, if we can work with 50,000 couples annually, which is our goal, then we get to present the gospel 50,000 times.
Right. So I'm going to back up. What drove you to found this organization?
Was actually told to do it.
You were told to do it. By whom?
Very much. The Lord told me to do it. In fact, the Lord said, I want you to work with 50,000 couples annually dealing or had that have been impacted by infidelity. So it was kind of clear what he wanted.
And how long have you been doing this?
Well, I volunteered for it in 1984 when my own infidelity was exposed and the Lord set me free. So I guess I've been dealing with it since then.
Wow. So you're a success story. You and your wife.
I don't know. I had multiple affairs. Yeah, I was successful at having multiple affairs, for sure. But yeah, he also was able to reconcile our relationship. And I know he's capable of working that miracle for, we've seen tens of thousands of people through a fair recovery, their marriages be saved, and they come out stronger, better, wiser. I mean, they will always say the marriage is better than before.
Wow. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around the amount of forgiveness and grace required in this process. So you and I were talking beforehand. The United States is kind of the top of the list for places in the world that have extramarital affairs. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I was looking down here, and today so far the traffic has been London is leading the way, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, Chicago, but Texas does really well.
Yeah.
But you can also tell there's a lot of people from all over the world.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was looking at earlier. I was like, is it more prevalent in some states than the others? And Texas was listed as kind of one of the hot spots
It
for
is one
affairs,
of the hot spots.
which it's unusual to me. Like Texas to be known as kind of a southern, like conservative Christian state, why this is a hot spot for affairs.
Well, so one of my opinions has always been that faith in no way protects you from infidelity. In fact, it probably puts a target on your butt. In reality, people say, well, because I believe in Christ, does that mean that I'm less likely? And I personally believe people of faith are probably more likely if you look at Romans chapter 7, where it says, before the law, I didn't have a problem with coveting, but once the law came and I was told, do not covet, then sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by that law, put me to death. And now I struggle with covetousness all the time. And so I think that once we're told not to do something, the enemy has the ability to now tempt us with it.
Right. So is it kind of just my general observation is, are they usually emotional affairs that turn physical, or are the affairs primarily just physical relationships?
So actually there are 6 different types of affairs.
Okay.
Because if you're going to do treatment planning, you've got to know what type of affair. There are some people that have a one-night stand, they got drunk, they were stupid. That's not emotional or anything. There's other people that think they've fallen in love and they found their soulmate. That's called a limerent relationship. Then there's some people who are like Slick Willie. They're addicts, and so they have multiple, but they're not emotionally connected. Then there are some people that have emotional affairs, non-physical. Then there's emotional affairs, physical. Then there's sex and love addicts who are just, they want to be involved. They go from person to person to person, but it's always about feeling like they're in love.
So is the treatment different depending on what kind of affair you have?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I pulled up on your website on Affair Recovery, and I'm looking at the process, and it starts with you assess your situation, like kind of figure out where you are on the journey.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Okay. So do people typically come to you when they suspect there has been an affair in their relationship, or do people come to you who have committed an affair or they're about to commit an affair?
I think a lot of time it's both. I would say the majority of the time, things have already gone downhill very quickly. And that affair analyzer, for instance, has over 650 different outcomes. It's a true decision tree. Wow. So what's happening is it's identifying what type of affair, so you know what type of treatment the person who strayed needs. But it also talks about what are the dynamics that each party brings in and what's unique about that type of couple so that we can get them the treatment they need.
So is it, I don't know, maybe my girlfriends and I have talked about this before because I have several girlfriends that have gone through divorces recently. Seems like we're kind of in that season of life
Right.
now where that starts happening. And if you have a partner who has been unfaithful, to me, it'd be like, I don't know if I could forgive. So how do you work with the spouse that has been wronged? How do you get them over that hump?
Well, let's see. If you told me that your husband had cheated on you and you said, I don't know. Well, if you said, I don't think I can forgive this, I would say, well, go pray about it and ask the Lord what he wants. Because Jesus is pretty clear
Yes.
about forgiveness. He kind of says it's not optional. He gives kind of an exception in Luke 17 for reconciliation, but forgiveness, not optional.
So what if you know you're supposed to forgive? How do you get your heart to align with that where you want to forgive because you're so angry? Like, is that just something God has to work on?
It takes time. I think there are several really good steps to forgiveness. Everett Worthington's work, his REACH model is amazing. And it's a lot of ways beginning to see that, I'm no different. When you begin to see how much you've actually been forgiven, it makes you understand, I think how much it makes forgiving easier, and also understanding you're not alone. Other people are going through this. You're not unique. This is something in a fallen world that happens on a regular basis. So having others going through it with you. In fact, I'll say the thing that's most powerful about affair recovery is the fact that we use community, and everyone, whether it would be wives that are going through it together in a course for those who've been betrayed, or couples. Everyone in there is like you, and so there's no shame. You're normal there. And being able to be in a situation where you see other people being able to do it, that also, it's possible. But until you've witnessed it, it's hard to believe that it could even be done.
Right. So you've seen marriages recover and then be just like healthy marriages after this act of infidelity.
So we just did some research, interestingly enough, and what it showed, we haven't published it yet, and it was a longitudinal study and with over 22,000 people who've come through our programs. So that's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It shows clearly that they can recover. Over 80% of people that come through our program stay married.
Wow. Do you see a willingness from both sides? No. Is there usually one partner who's like, I don't want to do this? And is that usually the partner who has had the affair, or is it the other person?
Yeah, I would say I don't know if I can give you a direct statistic. Sometimes it's the one who strayed and they're going, I'm going to be shamed, I don't want to do this. But a lot of times it's the betrayed spouse going, there's no way I want to even be with you. I want to just kill you. And the other person will say, okay, I'll tell you what, if you'll go through this with me, I'll give you the divorce. Okay. And then afterwards they're going, hey, we can do this.
So another question as far as statistics, is it more often the male partner or the female partner that has the affair?
It's usually, I think, it's about 8% lower for the women than for the men.
So not that big of a difference then.
No, we've never had more women over, for instance, we have lots of ways that people enter. Some people do a brick and mortar weekend piece. We do one of those once a month. But the vast majority that come to us are doing our online courses that are completely anonymous.
Okay.
But they're still in a cohort being led in a small group. And yeah, I forget your question.
Just if it's normally the male or female partner.
So what we see typically is it's about 2/5 are women.
Okay.
And last month we had 10 women and 20 men.
Okay. Because maybe this is kind of stereotypical, but like when I just think about marriages in America, it seems like a lot of times it's the woman's emotional needs that are not being met and the man's physical needs that are not being met.
Yeah.
So there are two different drivers that send them out
Yes.
looking for another partner.
Absolutely. But it's also doesn't necessarily have to be a bad marriage. There are many affairs that happen and it's a great marriage. There are other factors. So often what's driving this sort of thing is developmental trauma. It is
The person, like the individual themselves.
yeah, it's damage done as they were a child.
Yes.
And so some people are abuse reactive. They're responding to the abuse they had as a child. Some people, it's grandiosity. They suddenly hit this level in their life where suddenly they think they've succeeded, and so they give themselves permission. Other people, it's an existential crisis where there's been a huge loss, and they goes, is that all there is? And so they give themselves permission to have an affair.
Wow. So what has to happen in order for a marriage to recover from infidelity? Like what, I'm sure both partners have to be somewhat willing to come to the table and talk about it. And is there like a level of therapy that has to take place within each person individually? What's the secret recipe?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. There are many people that come through and just use our programs, and we can show that what we're doing with community and how we do it has a significant impact on anxiety, depression, and PTSD up through 36 months. So we can show that actually, they can heal without therapy, and many people do have therapy. I think it depends on, again, if somebody has a lot of developmental trauma, they're going to need help understanding why. Our courses aren't necessarily designed to do that sort of work. Our courses are designed to bring healing through community. If we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we'll have fellowship with one another, John said.
Yeah.
And that's how God made us to be, is embedded in community. The problem is infidelity tends to cause us to want to isolate and not be in community. And so we don't have the resources necessary when we're isolated, I think. We may try individual therapy, but think about it. If you're in a community, you've got access to those people 24/7.
Right.
If you're in therapy, how much access do you have to the person? One time a week or once every 2 weeks?
Yeah.
You need more than that.
Is the program predominantly designed for Christ followers, or do you have people who are non-believers that come through?
We have everything.
Okay.
So we are definitely faith-based. However, and it's based on teachings of Jesus. Even in our secular work, I still will quote Jesus. I just don't use his name. But however, it is all kinds of people come through, whether they're atheist, agnostic. We get people from Bahrain or people from China or people from Australia, New Zealand. There are a lot of people who aren't faith-based also, but they still benefit from it.
Yeah. Do they respond okay to, like, especially if you're dealing with people who are in other countries that are predominantly Islamic?
Yes.
They respond okay to the kind of the Christian sense of the program.
Right. I think that, and we tell them, if you're coming from a faith perspective, look at it this way. If you're coming from a secular perspective, let's look at it this way. But what I find is that even if it's Muslim, there are a lot of things we have in common. I think that sometimes, it's funny you mentioned forgiveness. Sometimes Muhammad's teachings on forgiveness weren't the same as Jesus. So culturally, you begin to look, if somebody's from Israel, what do the rabbis teach about forgiveness? I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So you've got to know different denominations as well as different religions, as well as meeting people who are just agnostic and very scientifically minded or humanist.
Okay. So what do you say? This is a two-part question. What do you say to the partner who has had an affair? What can you say to them to give them hope?
One of the things we do is show people a lot of stories, a lot of videos, because there's nothing better than visual proof. I can share my story. I mean, 1 Timothy 1:15, Paul says, Jesus came to the world to save sinners, of whom I'm the worst. But it was for that reason I was shown mercy, so that in me, the chief of all the bottom-dwelling, slime-sucking scumbags, he could display his unlimited patience as an example to anybody else who would believe in him and receive eternal life. So for someone who's strayed, who's fallen, I can always say, look, if God's able to redeem me and redeem my marriage, you're not even a challenge. You have no idea how bad I was. And he was able to handle that. So you need to know that it's possible. I think that's the first thing.
Yeah. Well, it seems like shame has such a stronghold. Like anytime you make like an egregious mistake, like especially I feel like for the enemy, for Christ followers, the enemy will come in and just like shame on you. And that's a hard thing to escape.
Well, no, that's Revelation 12, Lauren. Do you remember that? It's about the accuser of the brethren. That's what I tell everybody. So, how did they overcome him? It's like they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They didn't love their life so much as to shrink from death. So if Satan comes in and says, wow, you're an adulterer, you cheated on your wife, I would, the way they would respond back there, I think, in Revelation 12 is, yeah, and you should have seen all the times I thought about cheating and I didn't. But what's incredible is the blood of Jesus covered that, and I still get credit for everything I never did. But yeah, you lied. Oh, I did. I lied. I lied all the time. But I didn't even tell all the lies I thought about. But here's what's incredible: the blood of Jesus covered even that, and I still get credit for everything I never did. When you make it God's story and not your story, there's no shame. There's just a miracle. If it's your story, yeah, it's pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
If you're telling, though, how God's redeemed you in spite of that, because the good news, it's like how God saved you. When you can look at it that way, there's no shame.
That's good. So then the second part of that question is, what do you say to the spouse who has been wronged, who has their partner has had the affair, and they just want to cut and run? What do you say to them?
I don't blame you. I don't blame you for drop kicking them through the goalpost of life, nor do I think you a fool if you were to choose to be a part of their redemption. You need a good word from God. But here's the bottom line. God has no wasted pain. And this point right now that you're at, it is your best opportunity to be transformed, because God uses this as a catalyst for transformation and to grow us. And this is your best chance to have a redo for how you're going to live your life.
I just thought of a third part. I don't know if you watch the podcast, you find my brain is always spinning. Now I got another question. And this one could be even the most important. What do you say to people who are right on that line? They're maybe like in that dangerous territory of about to have either an emotional or physical affair.
I'm sure not going to tell them not to do it. Because if I tell them not to do it, if they're really ambivalent about it, I'll push them into it. I'll say, I doubt seriously that you're capable of not doing this apart from God, so go ahead and get it over with.
Wow.
Now, they'll say, well, I don't want to do that. But by telling them that they can't help it, they'll go, yes, I can. But if I tell them, don't do it, they'll say, you can't stop me.
Interesting. So psychology there.
A little bit.
Yeah. Will, our former senior pastor used to talk about, he would quote you saying something about don't gather firewood.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Tell me what the context of that is.
Well, so another way of looking at people have to walk up to the edge of the cliff before they fall off. So there's typically a whole series of bad choices that occur long before we get somewhere. In fact, we fall out with God long before we fall into an affair. We fall out of our marriage long before we get, fall out with God before we fall out of our marriage. So don't get there, firewood. Don't get the circumstances. Put yourself in circumstances where you've got the kindling necessary to create that affair. Stay away from it.
What would be examples of the kindling that we gather?
So I think a lot of times, I had somebody recently that came in and, was his wife mad? Anyway, he'd been looking at porn. She was lit up like a light bulb, and I don't even think she took a breath for the first 20 minutes telling me everything that was wrong with him. And he had messed up. And so when she finally took a breath, I looked at him and said, dude, I would have done the exact same thing, which I think shocked her a bit. And she's going, what? And I said, no. And I'm still talking to him. I said, the only difference between you and me is I never would have put myself in that situation on those programs, going down that path, because I know I couldn't handle it. People only fall into stuff because of pride and hubris and shame and ego, because they'll put themselves in situations they think they can handle. But if you don't trust you and you know that if you're not walking with Jesus, that you're most likely to do it, guess what? You'll never relapse. You're only going to be as weak as your strongest link.
You're only going to be as weak as your strongest link.
Yeah,
Okay.
where you put yourself in situations where you think nothing will happen. But that's kind of like walking around on a construction site without a hard hat, hoping some sort of debris will hit you on the head. You just don't want to put yourself in harm's way.
No, that's good. Well, I definitely want to share your website with our viewers. It's Fairreoverycom.
Right.
And you talked about like anonymity, like if people want to go and explore, they're not necessarily on record immediately.
Right.
Okay.
So and I don't know if you ever post links. I can give you links also. But so when you go to the website, there's, for instance, like the Affair Analyzer, there's a free First Steps boot camp that, almost 100,000 couples have gone through at this point. And that stabilizes it, and it gives you a way to talk about it, and oftentimes to heal. You don't even have to do one of the courses. There's a recovery library with over 6,000 resources.
I see there's testimonials, success stories, free resources, a blog.
There's YouTube channel, which has over 1,500 videos. And people watch those all the time because it lets them know they're normal. What you need is to know you're not crazy and you're not alone.
Okay, that's good. And your story is on there too. So if
that needs to be reshot. I was a lot younger then.
Well, no, this is all really, really helpful information, and I think incredibly relevant, not just to people who are not Christians, but to people who are within the faith struggling with this. So I really appreciate your transparency in talking about this, your humility, and it's what you guys are doing is amazing, and it's so cool to have you here to talk about this. And I just want to encourage the people who are watching, go to fairreoverycom if you want to know more, you want to learn more. If you have additional questions, our form on this podcast submission page is anonymous. It's www.acfellowship.org/podcast. If you have additional questions, if you would like to leave contact information there, you can do so. But definitely want to, if you're struggling with this, definitely want to connect you to Repair Recovery. One of our very own ACFers running it right here.
Thank you. Can I make one more comment?
Yes, absolutely.
So I know of churches who've actually used infidelity as an amazing tool of evangelism. So when they've, outside of the church, find somebody dealing with infidelity, they use our resources, but they also get them to begin coming to the church for prayer. And like, for instance, Gateway South Lake has used it and had hundreds of couples that they've used as a way of kind of getting them both spiritual support and then help.
Right.
And because at this point, when people are in that place, they are looking for help.
Right. So
it's an easy way. It's slow pitch softball when it comes to sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
They need good news.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rick. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you.
I love y'all's ministry. Love what you're doing. So yeah, thank you for joining us. You guys, thank you for tuning in for this episode. And like I said, feel free to send additional questions in at our podcast forum. And we will look forward to seeing you guys on an episode next week.